Part 1. Born of the Gang. Chapter 1. Roaring Creek Reserve, West Coast, New Zealand, 1974. The sharpened blade of the chisel glistened in the early morning sun. Laid out beside it, the ceremonial mallet and the decorative glass jars filled with ink. Alicia watched the women arrange the brutal weapons on the flax-covered table. She heard them joke about instruments of torture. How could they laugh at something so horrid? The boys stood in line on the dais in front of the old pavilion, their bodies shaking. Alicia shielded her eyes. She'd witnessed the savage ritual many times before. It hurt as much today as it had the first time her father, Reggie, made her sit through the ordeal. "Take your hands away from your eyes," Reggie said. "You're the gang president's daughter. You're 10 years old. Act your age. Blood and ink, they are sacred to this gang." Alicia peeked through her fingers. There was nothing sacred about chiseling young boys' faces and disfiguring them for life. She groaned as the elders removed the boys' shirts and laid their half-naked bodies on an ornately woven rug. Chad, the heavily inked tattooist, chanted an anthem, his chisel hovering over each of the boys' foreheads in turn. Alicia smelt the boys' fear. Laid bare on their backs, they were utterly defenseless. She glanced at the crowd. Heads remained bowed until Chad finished singing, then everyone chorused a half-hearted Amen. The moment she dreaded had arrived. Alicia gripped her mother Naomi's hand, waiting for the first gash. Chad was a bully, like her father. Alicia saw it in his eyes as he teased the boys with the blade. She dug her fingernails into her mother's wrists when the mallet struck the chisel. Another life stolen by the gang. The boys were never the same afterwards. Why? Alicia looked down at her feet. How could everyone just sit there and let it happen? She covered her ears, desperate to block out the relentless beat of the hammer and the shrieks from the boys. Her father nudged her. Raising her head, the sight of gushing blood tore her apart as violently as the blade gouged the boys' flesh and the dye stained their skin. Alicia waved her arms at the tattooist, then turned to her mother. "Make him stop! He's going to kill that boy!" "You know I can't. Everyone's looking at us." Naomi pressed a finger to her lips. "Listen, all boys have to go through it when they come of age. You know the rules. It shows their loyalty to the gang. They don't mind the pain." Alicia spotted her mother blink back a tear of her own. "Of course they do. Look at their faces." "Oh, Alicia, my darling, you take everything to heart." Naomi put her arm around her daughter. "It's their chance to show everyone how brave they are and prove they're men. They're proud of their tattoos." Another cry forced Alicia's eyes back to the chiseling. 2 minions held her friend Jono down. He was such a nice lad. She'd had a childhood crush on him once. She saw the terror in his eyes. He didn't deserve this. If only she could help. Instead, she endured the crowd's jeering as the chisel struck his head and blood streamed over his face, soiling the ceremonial rug. Alicia grabbed her mother's arm. "Why is he so rough with Jono? He's bleeding to death." "Try not to upset yourself." Naomi dried her daughter's eyes with a dirty old handkerchief. "I told you, it's just a gang tradition. You'll understand one day, when you're older." Alicia scowled at her mother. "Then I hope I never grow up." The elders wiped the blood from Jono's face. Alicia shied away as Chad continued carving, the grooves revealing a Celtic spear. Such a brutal weapon branded on this gentle boy's skin. It was all wrong. She began scratching her arms with her fingernails, mimicking the action of the chisel. As blood flowed from Jono's forehead, blood trickled from Alicia's forearm. She overheard some gangsters scoffing behind her. "Jono's old man must be right out of favour with Reggie. You kids cop it when you upset the boss." Jono lay in a pool of blood. Reggie grinned and signalled to the boy's parents to come and carry him off the dais. Alicia hid her face. How dare her father treat her friend like that? Reggie thumped Chad on the back. No mercy on the next one either, bro. Ollie's a wimp just like his father. Give him hell. No! Dad, please! Alicia sprang to her feet. Ollie's got a weak heart. Shut it, Alicia. Reggie pushed her back down into her chair. Learn some respect for gang traditions. More blood surged. More ink deposited. Small black pigments at first, shining through the congealed blood until the gang's mark appeared on each of the boys' faces. Alicia hated it. The words God's own gorillas branded in bold letters across their foreheads. So ugly. Their smooth cheeks dug up and blackened. She didn't know what all the curved lines meant, only that they were mighty scary. Alicia had spent many sleepless nights over the past couple of weeks, trying to work out how she could help the boys. Her dad was a cruel man. He'd never stop hurting those kids. Her mother wouldn't do anything about it either. That was obvious. Alicia had to think of something herself. But what? It was after midnight when the answer came to her. Kawakawa leaves. Alicia sat bolt upright in her bed. Of course. Her Aunt Martha swore they'd heal anything. Naomi always went on about Aunt Martha being as good as any doctor, and maybe she was. When Alicia was 6, she got a nasty bee sting on her leg. Aunt Martha rubbed kawakawa leaves into the bite, and the pain disappeared. If it worked for me, it'll work for them. Alicia couldn't get back to sleep. Before anyone else was up the next morning, she slipped out of the house to collect kawakawa twigs and leaves from the nearby bush. She snuck into the kitchen and used her mother's pestle and mortar to grind the leaves into a pulp. Once the ceremony was over, Alicia ushered Jono, Ollie, and the rest of the boys to the back of the pavilion. The moment they were out of sight, she thrust a jar of the kawakawa paste into their hands. Here, take this, rub it in, she urged. It'll help with the pain. It damn well works, Jono said, massaging the balm into the lacerations on his forehead. You're a bloody legend, Alicia. He smeared another dollop on his face and hugged her. Careful, Alicia said. The ink's still wet. You're smudging your tattoo. My dad'll go ballistic. She blotted his forehead with her sleeve. That's better. Okay, Jono, you're done. The boys crowded around her, each jostling to be next. Steady on, one at a time, Alicia said. Come on, Ollie, your turn. She glanced over her shoulder. The coast was still clear. Phew. She couldn't stop herself grinning when the boys gasped in relief as the kawakawa leaves worked their magic. Footsteps. Panic. Brushing the sweat from her forehead, Alicia stuffed the jar of kawakawa paste into her skirt pocket. Scoot! All of you! She hissed at the boys. Keep your heads down. Too late. Alicia, where are you? Her mother's voice. A shiver ran through her body. Damn, what am I going to do? No time to think. Naomi burst around the corner and glared at Alicia and the fleeing boys. Stop that at once! Naomi clutched Alicia's arm. Before your father catches you. God knows what he'll do to you. Will you never learn? Mum, please let go of me. Look, they need me, can't you see? You'll get the belt, and so will those boys, Naomi said. Is that what you want? Alicia shook her head. Naomi's voice softened. Then come and help me with the food. She took Alicia's hand and led her back to the crowd. But promise me, you'll never do this again. Alicia knew she would do it again, at any possible opportunity. She felt a surge of pride, watching the boys reunite with their families, and knowing it was her boldness that had eased their pain. Right under her father's nose. And he hadn't even noticed. Or had he? What the hell's going on? Reggie demanded when they emerged from behind the pavilion. What was Alicia doing? Nothing, Naomi blustered. Alicia was just... She's She's been admiring the boys' tattoos. Don't lie to me, Reggie spat in Naomi's face. Bloody woman. Alicia could tell her father was angry when he swore at her mother. Had he been spying on them? Had he seen everything? Reggie grabbed Alicia by her ear. It's time you learnt about your responsibilities. You don't speak to those kids. You don't play with them, you understand? Yes, Dad. Please let go. He pulled hard on her ear, making her wince. They won't learn respect for the gang from fraternizing with my daughter. Fraternizing? Alicia had no idea what that meant. She almost fell over when her father let go. Pulling herself up, she went to help her mother and the women lay out the food on the trestle tables in the old pavilion. He hadn't seen. She'd got away with it. Alicia was about to tuck in. The feast was the only good thing about the ceremony, when her father's booming voice silenced the festivities. What the hell is that? Alicia's heart stood still. She watched her father pick up the jar. He opened the lid and sniffed. Kawakawa leaves. Damn, must have fallen out of my pocket. Reggie marched up to the boys and eyeballed each of them. Oh God, he's seen the smudges. He knows. She saw his face turn bright red and his neck veins bulge. She often thought they would burst when he was in a mood. He spun around and slapped her face. Damn you! How dare you mock everything we hold sacred? You're a disgrace to the gang. Another slap. Alicia fell and grazed her knee on the ground. Please, Dad, I only wanted to help. Bollocks! Reggie's voice rose an octave. Bloody bitch! Leave her alone, Naomi interrupted, helping Alicia out of the mud and back on her feet. She's just a child. She doesn't know what she's doing. Reggie shoved Naomi aside. I'll deal with her later. Alicia cringed as he dragged the boys away from their families and lined them up in front of the pavilion. His nostrils flared as he marched up and down the line. You crybabies. Where are your balls? You need a nurse to look after you. Today was a test of your masculinity. And you've failed. Reggie ran his hands over the chiseled grooves on their foreheads. A mixture of blotched ink and kawakawa paste stuck to his fingers. The tattoo represents the honor of the gang. We'll ink you again in the morning. Alicia gulped. Don't take it out on them, please, it was my fault. And boy, will it hurt. Reggie pumped his fist. This is the last time you mock our formalities. He turned to face Alicia. Don't you dare show your face until tomorrow. There'll be no food for you today. I'd throw it up anyway, Alicia said. I will never understand how you can be so cruel to those poor boys. You need to think about your loyalties, Reggie hit back. He was about to land her a punch when Naomi intervened, standing between them. Stop that! Naomi grabbed Alicia and dragged her away. We're going home. Does anyone care? Alicia asked her mother while they walked. Don't you care? Of course I care. We all do. Naomi stopped and hugged her daughter. Don't fret. The pain doesn't last forever. Alicia's eyes locked on her mother's. Belonging to the gang does last forever. Alicia wanted to cry as she sat alone in her room, but her eyes remained stubbornly dry. Loyalties? What were they? Her father was always going on about pain as if it was a good thing. Surviving the chisel was supposed to show a gangster's courage. Alicia screwed up her nose. Naomi talked rubbish too. How could she say the boys didn't mind being hacked to pieces? Footsteps in the passageway. Was it Reggie coming to give her a thrashing? No, her mother. I brought you some leftovers. Naomi bustled through the door with a tray of food. I know how much you look forward to the feast. Alicia's stomach churned at the smell of meat and vegetables. She threw the food in the rubbish bin as soon as her mother left. 4 a.m. and Alicia's mind was still racing. Just a few hours. Then I'll have to watch them go through it all again. Jono, Ollie, Marty, Wally, Dan, all because of me. How can I look them in the eye? She dug her nails into her arms, even more ferociously than before. They'll think I got them into trouble on purpose. I have to share their pain. She was still awake when her mother came into her room at daybreak. Naomi drew back the curtains. Time to get ready. Alicia peered through the window. The sun looked as miserable as she felt. Hurry up, Naomi said. Breakfast's on the table. I'm not hungry. No way could Alicia face going into the kitchen, not with her father there. He'd be gloating at her between each mouthful of black pudding. You have to eat something. Naomi glanced down at the discarded food in the bin. Your dad won't be happy if you faint during the ceremony. Alicia bit the inside of her cheek. Why should she make her father happy? Her mother's hand felt limp as she led Alicia to the pavilion in silence. Alicia's legs were so weak that she was afraid of falling over. Reggie was there already, lining the boys up on the dais. She caught Ollie's bloodshot eyes. I didn't set you up. I never meant for this to happen. If only she could say the words out loud, tell him to his face. But would he believe her? Would any of them understand? Chad laid out the mat. Alicia balked. They hadn't cleaned off the bloodstains from yesterday. And Chad's anthem seemed even more dismal. From the corner of her eye, she glimpsed Reggie grinning to himself. You're not a father, you're a monster. First Jono. Would he survive another chiseling? He looked sick. Alicia squirmed at each strike of the mallet. She lowered her head and watched the colour drain from her hands as fast as the ink blackened Jono's skin. What was Chad chiselling on his chest? It wasn't the usual gang insignia. More like an animal, possibly a bird. Next Ollie, then Marty, Wally, and Dan. Reggie's hands writhed with excitement as each boy had a chicken tattooed on their chest, along with the freshly embellished tattoo on their faces. Perfect, bro. Reggie slapped Chad on the back when he'd laid down the chisel. Great job. Alicia's legs shook. When she stood up, her toes dipped in puddles of blood flowing from the dais. Her eyes darted randomly and her head dropped. Are you okay, Alicia? Her mother leapt up and caught her as she passed out. The familiar sound of her father blazing brought Alicia back to life. Blood and ink! Blood and ink! Everything was a blur at first. Alicia squinted at the boys as they stumbled off the dais. When she saw their faces, she wanted to collapse again. Blood ran into their eyes from the wounds on their foreheads, and they tripped on the wooden stairs. Perhaps they wouldn't see her with all that blood clouding their vision. She could tell they were too frightened to wipe it away. The slightest smudge would mean another round of chiseling. Naomi took Alicia home and laid her on her bed. Don't cry, my angel. You tried to do the right thing. I'm proud of you. The endless echo of the mallet striking the chisel haunted Alicia throughout her childhood. It was there, wherever she went, and whatever she was doing. Would it ever go away? Would she ever find peace? Or would it be there for the rest of her life? Roaring Creek Falls, West Coast, New Zealand, 1994. 20 years on, and the thump of the mallet continued to ring in her ears, a rumbling tinnitus that refused to go away. Living rough, trudging aimlessly through dense bush for days on end, Alicia gravitated to the Roaring Creek Falls, the only place on earth where she could find peace, where the pounding of the waterfall drowned the incessant noise of the chisel. Still, she was tied to the gang that stole her childhood. Alicia had sworn they wouldn't claim the rest of her life. She'd come so close to freedom. Just a couple of years earlier, here at the Roaring Creek Falls, a chance meeting had promised her a new beginning. Then everything came crashing down around her. Her dreams shattered and escape further away than ever. She felt the spray on her face. As a child, the endless deluge had brought her comfort, caressing her soul and tingling her skin with its pure, clean touch. Today, the ice-cold water only served to reflect the chill in her heart. Wandering downstream, Alicia's life flashed before her. The familiar landscape transformed into a teeming montage of images: love and hate, hope and betrayal, cascading as fast as the torrent of water hit the rocks. Visions so intense, she almost lost her footing on the riverbank. She was back with her impish cousin, racing down the rock slide. How could that fun-loving rascal have turned into such a shameless playboy? A glimpse of her first kiss with Amir under the falls. She could still hear his voice. Alicia, what a beautiful name. Such a charmer. She sat down on the rock at the very spot where they'd met. Alicia and Amir. He'd called them love and the east wind. He was her soulmate. Or was he? Could she really have got everything so wrong? Alicia threw a stone into the rapids. Why had she turned to Katerina for help in her hours of need? Katerina had done nothing but blacken Amir's name. What did that old witch know about anything? She may have been a revered Maori diviner, but her latest ramblings were a load of crap. Mickey, a hero? And Amir, a power-crazed businessman? What balls. Katerina had even tried to shock her, claiming Amir would turn her beloved waterfall into a water-bottling plant. Alicia didn't believe a word of it. She couldn't believe it, wouldn't believe it. Mickey was a monster. Amir was a man of vision. Alicia turned her back to the falls and walked away. This isn't my happy place anymore. Amir could have built his factory here for all I care. The Roaring Creek Falls have brought me nothing but bad luck. The arrival of a car with a young family temporarily distracted Alicia. Although it was 50 kilometres away from Greymouth, the nearest town, Roaring Creek had become a popular destination for weekend outings. Alicia watched the father park the car and take a hamper out of the boot. The mother laid a blanket on the grass in front of the waterfall. The two children tucked into the picnic, smearing their faces with Marmite from the sandwiches. After they'd finished eating, the kids splashed around in the water, while the parents lay back on the rug reading their books and basking in the sunshine. More day trippers arrived. Alicia sighed as they climbed to the top of the falls and took photos. They all looked so happy, so normal. Lucky sods. Why couldn't she have been born into another time or another place? Anywhere but into the gang.